Okay, good cranking practices. Make sure you get clear fuel lines uh, so you could make sure that there's no air coming into your carburetor. Make sure you have a good uh, primer bulb. It's an outboard motor primer bulb with a good check valve in it. Alright, we need to crank the motor on idle, only on idle, because this motor doesn't have any reed valves in it. If you open the throttle up, the motor won't crank, so you have to crank the motor on idle. I'll go over this again. This is the fuel overflow. It goes back to your gas tank. The middle one here operates your fuel pump through the crankcase. And the last one near the motor, that's your gas supply for your carburetor and your engine. You can choke it, crank it 2 or 3 times, then let it off, and then crank it. Usually they'll crank up. These motors were designed to run off a 91% octane and oil to gas mixture of 21, believe it or not, back in the 70s. This is a 70 motor. Okay, the gas has a long ways to go. It goes through this intake tube, goes through the center of the rotor, then it has to go through the wipers and then to the combustion chamber before the motor even fire up. The gas has a long ways to go before it even gets in the combustion chamber, and a quicker way to do this is mix up a bottle of 20-to-1 gas and oil mix, open the throttle up, squirt that in there, couple squirts, let go of the throttle, and then crank it up. Now that's for a cold start. Usually the motor will crank up when it's warm without the use of this. You could also use 40-to-1 or either 30-to-1 gasoline for this motor. It will run on 50-to-1, but I wouldn't recommend it. The motor is now set up to run off of points. It will crank up easier and it will pull start a whole lot easier. This motor has a specially designed spark plug. It's a V-type, open end. The points are set at, the gap is set at 19 thousandths here and 19 thousandths there. And you get fire across here, which is better for the combustion. It makes the motor crank up easier. But always set the gap at 19 thousandths and leave it at that, or the motor will not crank up. Okay, make sure you cut on the ignition right here. Let's cut the points on. Crank it up. This is a 1000 cc mikuni carburetor. And my muffler just fell off. As you heard, I took the muffler off so you could actually hear the motor. Okay, if you want to set it up on points, not points, but electronic ignition, it's already set up on points. All right, electronic ignition, you're going to have to unplug this right here. These two here, plug them into there in your module. Unhook your points. These two that are tied together right here, put them two together. Make sure the points don't touch. Make sure they don't touch here. And you'll have to have a starter on your gearbox to crank it, because the motor has to turn over a whole lot faster for the points to crank the motor. So hand cranking it with the electronic ignition, that'll never happen. You got to turn the motor over a whole lot quicker with a starter. Thank you. For right now, the motor is set up to run off of points. It'll crank up and run a whole lot easier with the pull start. You'll